week this week. We've really missed training. I think we've seen it a little bit in our performances. So great to recover that sharpness and intensity behind our work.
Matt, the Empower Field game against Miami, withstanding home form
Yeah.
here at the Dick, has been unbeaten. What does it feel like to have that week off to train and to get back home into the stadium and get 3 points in the collar?
Yeah, I think that's got to be the intention for us. It is every time we step on the pitch. Like you say, we do have a very good feeling here. We have a good record here. We know we want to make this place extremely difficult for any team to come, regardless of their form, regardless of where they are in the table. So that'll be the same this week. But we have to focus on our football, how we put that onto the pitch. How we stop a really complex opponent. They have some real complex movements in terms of their build-up, how they progress up the pitch. So we've done a little bit of work today in terms of how we can press the game. And obviously with the players, we've got a few guys probably missing from the game, and the balance of the squads, they all seem to be in the same position at the moment. So we also have to be creative and probably play a slightly different structure and a slightly different way tactically. So that's been a bit of a feature of the last couple of days, and looking forward to seeing it at the weekend.
That was Rapids coach Matt Wells talking about the upcoming home game for the Colorado Rapids after a tough couple losses on the road during MLS regular season play, anyway. Obviously, the pancaked in between those was the win over the Switchbacks of Colorado Springs, elevating the Rapids to the quarterfinals of the U.S. Open Cup. That game coming up against San Jose, West leaders San Jose in MLS regular season anyway. That will be a test, and I'm excited for that. Also coming up on Rapids Rant, I am Don Pablo. Thanks for tuning into the show today ahead of a Rapids match against St. Louis. Do we still consider them an expansion team? They're not that old. Rapids, of course, in the 30th season of MLS play. That game's coming up this weekend. Rapids returning to DSG Park, what will hopefully be better weather than this past week. A little cold spell. I'll take it. We're gonna wish we had one of these in the middle of summer come August. So whatever. You can find Rapids Rant on social media. Go to Blue Sky, of course, on Twitch. Go to Rapids Rant and Mountain Time Sports Report on Twitch and YouTube, Mountain Time Sports Report. You can listen to me talk about, more of the bigger picture reports, more of the macro, not as much micro. I do, have some interesting takes. I listen to more of the business side of sports. I will be talking about some sports business journal article and my preseason prediction for last week. And see, there some news today about what's going to happen, basically in the preseason in the coming year, at least for next year, and Leagues Cup news. Other than that, there's some rivalry situation, and the Cronkies, the ownership group and the sports owners, are they the most successful sports owners in the past, 25 years? We'll see. We'll talk about that more coming up on Rapid Rant today. And I was excited for this week. Obviously, the Nuggets crashed out of the playoffs last week. It was a sad time. I was just getting over it last Rapids Rant, and today, feeling good about the Avalanche up 2-0 in their series against the Minnesota Wild. And my wife, who's not really an NHL fan, she'll watch Avalanche when it comes to the playoffs. She was like, who are they playing? Who are the Avalanche playing? And I said, Minnesota. And she's like, oh, they have to beat them. They have to beat them after what the Timberwolves and that cheater Alex Rodriguez did to the Denver Nuggets last week. By the way, Timberwolves, they stole one in San Antonio, but they got a beat down for game 2. That series looks like it's kind of preordained, and it looks like it's going to be San Antonio versus Oklahoma in the Western Conference Finals of the NBA. But we're not talking about NBA. We're talking about the Colorado Rapids today. Obviously, they had a rough Saturday night last week in Houston, but they get 7 days, and I kind of played the wrong sound there. I thought they were talking about, and Coach Matt Wells, and he said this during the media availability was, they get a whole week off. They played a bunch of games. I think it was 7 games in 30 days or 28 days or something. And their Rapids are about to kick off another 5 games in before the 23rd of May. And today, is the 8th, so 15 days. And that's going to be, at the end is going to be the World Cup break. So they'll get some time off then. And, it's going to be mid-season soccer, so they're not going to, take too much time off. I'm sure they got to keep fit and everything, but it's just playing all those games rubs on the team. Obviously, we'll talk about injuries in a minute, but Rapids kind of lost their edge there in the second half, and it started in Vancouver, and it continued in Houston, who kind of owed us one. They owed the Rapids one. It was a Rapids domination here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park a couple weeks ago, and now Houston did that back to the Rapids in the second half last week. But I'm glad they get 7 days. There was news, contract news, a couple people added to the front office. I'm excited about that. I noticed that Spanish language stations have been showing up to media, and they've been more live. They've been more present this year. And I think that's only a good thing. Obviously, Messi came to town, and the World Cup adds to more visibility, and hopefully the news directors want to put those guys on more to get the Spanish speakers around Denver to watch the games and everything. And obviously they're excited for the World Cup. So I'm glad it could only be a positive for MLS. And, obviously the news of calendar change and, just bigger viability and maybe even some more rivalry. If you're watching LAFC, and by the way, let me say this: MLS, no more MLS in CONCACAF Champions Cup. Both LAFC and Nashville lost, so it'll be Toluca versus. Oh, forgive me, I was just looking at this. Sorry about that. Tigres and Toluca in the CONCACAF Champions League, Champions Cup finals. And if you remember during the Rapids last game against U.S. Open Cup against Colorado Springs, when Colorado went up 2-1 in overtime, maybe some of the Rapids players ran through the coaching box of the switchbacks. They're very excited. They're scoring a goal. They think that's the game-winning goal. So they run down there. And I thought it was supposed to be like a card or something for doing that, running through the opposing coach's box. Obviously, they're excited. It's it's not like taking your shirt off and getting a yellow, but at that point, there had already been 2 yellows assessed to the Colorado Rapids bench. Springs didn't have any, but they were, it's a rivalry, and they're the USL team coming to MLS Stadium, and they want to show their worth and everything. So, poor form maybe by the Rapids a little bit. But if you do that to Colorado Springs, don't be surprised when they do it back to you. And then there's a kind of a pushing, shoving match on the bench on the Rapids side of the field anyway. And I was going to let it go. I was like, that's sports, it's sports. It's going to be like that sometimes. There's no fist fights. I don't even think a card was involved at the end of the game for either side of those situations. and they didn't even address it after the game because it was really not that big a deal in the moment. Probably, it's just it adds to the anticipation. It adds to the wonderment of the game. And obviously the Rapids prevailed in penalty kicks. Captain Keegan Rosenberry, defender, by the way, Caberto, host emeritus, Caberto, he always talks about how defenders put one over the bar. Defenders always hit the ball too hard when they do penalties. But I was excited for a defender, the Rapids, Keegan Rosenberry, for sure top 5 in appearances, and I think he's number 2 in appearances all time after Drew Moore. He's either 2 or 3, or minutes. It's one of those. And Captain Keegan Rosenberry just puts it through and sends the Rapids on their way in the U.S. Open Cup. And obviously it's going to be a tough match against San Jose here in a couple weeks. I think it's May 18th. So we got about 10 days, 11 days until that happens back at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. And trust from the crowd that came for that match when it was a little chilly that day. Hopefully the weather is better and hopefully we get more fans out for San Jose against the Rapids. But I bring up the kind of rivalry and the sports competitiveness because if you watch LAFC Toluca, their coach, coaches get a rivalry, and not every coach has to be liked, and it's not always professional, and sometimes it's just how it is. That's just how sports is. Not everybody likes everybody, right? It's just not possible. Not everybody likes you. It's fine. Once you learn that lesson in life, hopefully you do it. I don't know, 4th or 5th grade. you change as a person a little bit, but the Toluca manager and LAFC did this in the first leg of the semifinals of Champions Cup. They got a little I don't know, maybe personal. Maybe the Toluca coach took what LAFC did personal. Because the Toluca coach at the end of the match against LAFC to move on to the final, he started dancing. Which is, I mean, you celebrate however you want, and of course, soccer, you're used to these big celebrations, and that's half the fun in FIFA. Learning the celebrations, so when you do finally score that goal against your opponent, you can pull off the special ones, and you got to learn those moves. Like you're playing a fighting game, you're learning the combinations for the celebrations pretty easily. Because the at least for EAFC or used to be called FIFA, whatever year 25-20. That's one of the things. The controls didn't really change for that. So you play your whole year, you learn those controls. They change a little bit. Obviously, the gameplay changes a little bit, but the celebrations are where it's at. I remember, and just to maybe talk a little trash from friendly rivalry that me and host emeritus Caberto have is I would do the Mario Balotelli flex move where he did. I used to do that to Caberto. I was so sad when they took that out of the game because that was my favorite one, and it was my Xbox Live avatar and avatar even on Twitter for a long time. But just the friendly rivalry. But the coach for Toluca, he took it personally for what LAFC did, and then LAFC coach Marcos Santos, he called him out after the game, which is surprising because you don't really hear that. And maybe it was poor sportsmanship, but it's a what about it kind of ism thing. Like, well, LAFC did it then. Now Toluca's doing it. I mean, it's entertaining to me in the sports media. We like the story. We like to write about whatever. So to actually have something different than, both teams played well, you had a great time, the other team did a great job, they're a tough opponent. We get a little bit of, hey man, a little bit of, I guess, WWE, WWF situation. Like there's a rivalry. Nobody's coming to blows in the parking lot, I mean, I'm sure that story would be on the front page of ESPN, and it would be something different to talk about than the same thing they talk about every day. But I think it's good not only for CONCACAF, but for this Leagues Cup, because these two teams might play in the Leagues Cup in a couple months, right? And Mexico, I mean, when the Rapids won those couple games at Dick's Sporting Goods to go to the semifinals of the Leagues Cup a couple years ago under Armas, the same thing all those Mexican coaches said of the Juarez guy and forgive me, I forget. I don't know. Leon, I think, came. They all said, why aren't there any matches in Mexico? And I think it was because MLS fronted most of the money and starting this idea. So, they're taking advantage of it and bringing these Mexican clubs into the United States. So they're fans from the United States, because we're all in the same region, and there's a lot of Mexican people in the United States, and they have their teams, and obviously those are very well attended games for the Leagues Cup. But now, that creates a little bit of a rivalry. They played them a couple years. Now this is Champions Cup, and just as in Champions League, and we'll talk about Arsenal in a minute here. They want these teams want their prize money. They want the prestige. Hey man, we beat the MLS teams. They were getting crazy on our home field. We did the same thing back to their home field. We'll see if we play them in the Leagues Cup. At the very least, we'll see if we get another chance against LAFC, who's a regular participant in these kinds of competitions. So I think the rivalry in that kind of way on the field, in the TV viewership, which is the whole ball game, the TV money and the TV viewership, MLS and worldwide, for sure. So this is only gonna increase it. I think MLS clubs versus Liga MX, even the Canadian MLS teams and Canadian other prestige clubs in Canada. Excuse me. I think it only can help, right? And let me just read this quote from the LAFC head coach Mark Dos Santos. He called Turco Mohammed clownish. He called him a clown. Payaso, if I know the name, if I know that Spanish word, I think I know a couple. There were clowns on the bench, said after the match. Dos Santos, I have class as a person. I know how to win and I know how to lose. I want to wish Coach Mohammed and Toluca good luck on the final. Basically said, bless you, child. But I'm excited to watch the Champions Cup final, obviously, here in a couple weeks. Rapids still in the U.S. Open Cup and taking it seriously. And Coach also said that during his media availability. So I think rivalry is only going to help TV presence, only going to bring, if we travel to Mexico, don't you want to see a game? Obviously, Azteca is the big name one, but as we did last year when I did a comparison of Juarez and San Diego FC's home fields, that even if you're playing, I'm sorry, not Juarez, Tijuana's field in Juarez, Tijuana and San Diego. Forgive me, Tijuana and San Diego. If you can just go across the border, and obviously that might take a little bit, you got to take an extra time. But if they're playing in a match in the Champions Cup or in Leagues Cup, or even in the preseason, you want to go see, to make time to go see that would be awesome. And I've been to Juarez. The stadium didn't exist. It was a different team. But where the stadium is now, I've been there. It's been years and years. But, I would go down there. Maybe New Mexico United plays them. Maybe the Rapids or the Switchbacks or the Hailstorm from Northern Colorado. But, these regional rivalries. And these games are close, man. Like, NBA or NHL, it's all the same. And they're all in the Mountain Time Zone. The ones I'm talking about, not Tijuana and San Diego, but these regional rivalries, which I think they need to play up more, especially on a bigger stage just as like Champions Cup and the regional confederations, right? Obviously, we got to go to a different country, and that's tough. Make sure to bring your passport. Don't forget that. But I think it can only help, and to have that rivalry and to see that happening would only help the MLS and maybe get more resources for the Rapids, resources for the league. And by the way, real quick, I know that MLS Apple TV has a Spanish language option, but I think that it needs to be on a bigger platform. Netflix didn't get into sports until after Apple. Paramount Plus, right after Apple. So, the content and library of those services is a lot bigger. And when you could tell people, I'm just saying, like, maybe they Spanish Netflix Espanol. They have, I was watching The Paper the other day. Definitely watch that. But I knew they had a Spanish option. Obviously, Marcelo Balboa, I think, is the number one team there, and definitely the number one team for for, forgive me, Univision for the World Cup. And if I knew more than 15% of the words, I would probably watch him instead of most of the English language. Anyway, talking about Champions Cup and that final and watching CONCACAF like that, and I think it's only going to get better because with the MLS's move to the new calendar next year, there's obviously another very important final coming up for the Rapids owner, Stan Kroenke, because Arsenal made it to the final. Arsenal's in the UEFA Champions League final. And that is awesome. And that is great. And if you pair, and I think my first point is Arsenal's still, and they're in the driver's seat to win the English Premier League as well. Good for them. I will be rooting for them in Champions League final, not so much in English Premier League, but I also think that they need to win these things. And I understand people get mad about it. And I was talking about Garber when Messi was here, and he said Arsenal. And the reason I was like, wow, the name change, they should change it to Arsenal. I was on board with that 20 years ago when Kroenke first bought the team. Obviously, it didn't happen then. It's like a Washington Bullets situation. Although, just because it's called the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, they're not making weapons there anymore. It's a wildlife preserve. It's just on the arsenal. So really, what's happening there now doesn't have anything to do with making weapons or anything like that. But they're on the arsenal. So I would say, give them a reason to call them Arsenal. But, the Gunners, probably not that. Probably won't be named that. But I just think there's some clues, and it's been said before for sure, and I'd have to look it up, but I know I read that Stan Kroenke wanted to call him Color Arsenal. And there's a rebrand coming soon, and they've already said they're not changing to the Rapids, but, Rapid Arsenal, Rocky Mountain Arsenal, I think they should do it, and I think that if Arsenal won Champions League, it would be a bigger, obviously it helps the brand and it gets the casuals in there. It gets your fair weather fans for the disdain I have for them. And not casual fans, the fair weather fans. Like this year, they're a fan of Arsenal. Next year, they're going to be a fan of, I don't know, PSG. Like, pick your team, stay with it. It paid off for Denver Nuggets fans a couple of years ago if you lived through between Dikembe Mutombo and Carmelo Anthony. Right? Just saying. And then there was a couple not the best years until Michael Malone was head coach. And then, obviously what happened. They won the title. If you lived through in between Joe Sakic leaving as a player and Joe Sakic coming back as a general manager and president of the team now, there were some tough years. So it made that 2022 for the Nuggets all the better for that, all the sweeter for that, because the first year they got a really good team from Quebec in 1996. And obviously they won the title that year. Then 2001 with the rivalry with the Dallas Stars and the Detroit Red Wings and Avalanche winning the President's Trophy, winning one for Ray Bourque, coming out on top. So I like when fans, you're not winning every year. Got to go live through the down years, makes the championships all that much sweeter. Fairweather fans, thank you for watching and kind of understanding what's happening. But I mean, I don't know. Anyway, so as far as Arsenal, I think it'll help the brand. Maybe it'll lessen the reigns. And look, man, I like the Rapids name, but the Wiz are not the Wiz anymore. Obviously, the Dallas Burn, probably the worst name. Outside of I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Dallas Burn. Miami Fusion was good. Tampa Bay Mutiny. Actually like that name. But maybe it's time to grow up a little bit, Rapids fans, and I'm gonna get in trouble for this. If everybody look, Real Salt Lake. What's royal about something? I don't get in trouble. So just saying, maybe we should be Arsenal. And the more exposure and the more popular that is, maybe it'll turn some favor here in the Rapids. I understand it's 30 years. I went to, I'll say this, I went to Thomas Jefferson High School here in Denver. The colors were brown and gold. Brown and gold, all right? They started in 1960. TJ started in 1960. Denver Broncos started in 1960. They took the same colors from the Denver Broncos. Let me just say this. When did the Denver Broncos change their colors? It's been 50 years now, plus. They brought back the gold and yellow striped socks, but that didn't catch on at all because Broncos identified blue and orange. People, and now brown is kind of made to come back, and the Padres are brought it back. I understand that, but brown and gold. That's not. And no offense to Wyoming Cowboys, let's change it. But they always be like, the alumni would freak out. The alumni would freak out. And I'm like, I don't think the alumni would freak out. I think they will not like it for a minute, but who's wearing brown and gold? All right? You don't even see Wyoming people wearing brown and gold. And usually you wear your college, university colors more than high school anyway. I'm just saying, if Arsenal becomes a brand of winning all these things, maybe it'll make it a little bit easier to transition the Colorado Rapids into Colorado Arsenal Rapid, or I don't know, something. Rocky Mountain Arsenal would be my choice of name, but obviously we don't always get what we want. Not that I don't like the Rapids name. It's just the Colorado Rockies are the only team from the 1990s that kept purple. They kept purple as their color. All right, who's out here wearing purple? How many times do you see purple walking around versus how many times you see blue and orange? And the Rockies had a pretty good spell of success. It's been 20 years now, but whoever is wearing purple, right? It's not happening. I can spot a Rapid fan, I can spot a Bronco fan, I can spot a Nugget fan or an Avalanche fan, burgundy and everything. I don't know. Sometimes change needs to change, Colorado Rockies. And just to put this on the record, I hope that the new Broncos owners that bought a piece of the team and changing the team president, I hope they figure out their uniform situation, because whatever has been happening in the last 5 years is not happening. I got, this is how much purple, which is very little, goes into Rockies logos and everything. So I don't know. We get the predominant color, but sometimes change needs to change. But it's funny when I looked it up, and all the teams from the 1990s that had purple in their logo, the expansion cousins, Diamondbacks, and Tampa Bay Devil Rays, Phoenix Suns basically took it out. And I forget the other teams, but I looked it up and I was just like, the Rockies are the only team that keep purple in there. So am I actually going on a rant? And I usually don't go on rants that often for a show called Rapids Rant. But I am passionate about this and passionate about the Rapids' success. And if Arsenal wins Champions League and the English Premier League this year, then it will be the Colorado Rapids that have had the longest streak under Kroenke's ownership without a title. But flip side of that coin, if Arsenal wins Champions League final and English Premier League or English Premier League, every team that Kroenke owns will have won a title, which is major titles. The Nuggets won. The Avalanche have won twice under Kroenke's tutelage, including the first one in 2001 in the Pepsi Center, in the Ball Arena, but it was Pepsi Center back then. Obviously, the Rapids won. Colorado Mammoth, the Box Hockey League, has won several times. Avalanche won again in 2022. The St. Louis Rams won the Super Bowl at home in SoFi Field a couple years ago. Sean McVay, who's a legacy kid from the first Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they first entered the NFL. And the Rams obviously were in the Final Four last year. So we're looking at this. If they win Champions League, the trophy room at Josh Kroenke's house in Cherry Hills, or maybe the trophy room, nobody not many people have been in the fabled apartment at Pepsi Center, although there's been a bunch of TikTok stories about it lately, and I'm like, all right, whatever. So, yeah, you've seen the apartment. It's up there. Good for them. The trophy room of that place, it will be amazing. It will be, the most diverse place. Like, we'll say this, it's like an art collector, right? Except for you can't just pay to win these trophies. All right. There's so many other factors that go into winning a sports trophy, sports title. And if the Crunkies get that, I don't know. They got to start. What else can they win? Right? Like what else can they win? Maybe the CONCACAF Champions Cup trophy. Some other soccer, United States soccer trophies, CONCACAF. But it's going to be unprecedented. It's going to be different. They're not going to just call him, Kroenke like the richest owner in some domestic leagues. He's going to be the most successful guy in the last quarter century since 2001, right? So for all the crap, for all the trash talk, for all the bad words about the ownership, and I've heard it a million times. I mean, if Arsenal wins that, then the people are gonna have to start eating their words. And I mean, just to like, you seen the Tom Brady picture and the Michael Jordan picture where he has the 6 rings, and then Tom Brady did that, but he has 7. Stan Kroenke can walk around with like a Champions League medal, Super Bowl ring, Stanley Cup ring, NBA Larry O'Brien trophy. The Rapids got a ring all those years ago. That'll be, I mean, it's like collecting art, except for things that you can't possibly, buy. And you could buy a Super Bowl ring, you could buy all that, but it's not, hey man, my team won, right? And as far as like other competitions you can win, I don't know. You can't buy a gold medal. You can't win that unless it's a personal thing. I know, horse racing is a thing. I don't know if the Crunkies are into that kind of thing. But then they'd just be trainers. Falconry is kind of the same way. Speaking of LAFC, who the first kind of I was talking to the LAFC media relations people when they came to Denver last year, and they said the Falcons that they hatched were like the first kind of thing they did before they bought any players, before they bought their coach. They bought 2 Falcon eggs. And so the LAFC, their owners like falconry. I don't know if Kroenke and LAFC, and it's not Will Ferrell, it's the other guys, can get in some kind of falconry competition. I don't know how that even works, but I know that falconry is a thing. And, I don't know. Maybe Jokic can bring the horse carriage racing situation. Maybe Kroenke can sponsor that, but who knows? I don't know. Winning the CONCACAF Champions Cup, while it's maybe a couple year, maybe a little far off dream. We're looking at maybe, I mean, you can already maybe say that they're the most successful sports owners in the United States. But put that on there, and as far as not just the Rapids or not just any team in particular that they own having the most the most trophies in their particular country, it'll be the most diverse trophy case that you would ever see. And that would be an awesome thing. And I'd put that as my avatar if I were them. I don't know, because Kroenke, I know he likes to stay back and not do interviews as much, and they call him Silent Stan for a reason. All right. One of his former teams, former homes of Stan Kroenke, although him and Josh are from Missouri, they both played at Missouri college basketball anyway. St. Louis Rams. Not St. Louis Rams. We're talking about St. Louis City. And the Rapids they're hosting St. Louis at DSG Park this weekend. Rapids home record, very good. On the road, maybe not so much. So we're looking forward to St. Louis coming to town. Rapids getting back on the winning ways in the MLS this weekend. It's a 7:30 Mountain Time start. 7:30 for the Rapids this week. The Avalanche also playing 7 o'clock, I believe, Saturday night in Minnesota, though. So no conflict with the Colorado Rapids that day. I'm excited for the game. I believe I will be in attendance to see the Rapids take on St. Louis. Hopefully, Yappy gets on the score sheet after he extended his contract with the Rapids. He'll be back here for a couple more years at least, and he's crawling up. He's moving up the boards for appearances and even goals. And to watch him, where I think it was 20 something appearances for the Rapids without a goal early in the career, Fraser, under Robert Fraser, and then him finally, breaking through last year in the second half of 2024 under Chris Armas, and now the start that Yappy had to this season. We've seen him grow. He's a homegrown, and all the happiness and success for him. Obviously, Hoffa, who is in on almost every goal this year, he created amazing chances last week, and it's fun to watch him play. The Rapids, as I said after the hour and 20 minutes plus of game time the other night in the U.S. Open Cup, you can't say the Rapids aren't entertaining. They're fun to watch. Hey, they might lose, but you know what? They're entertaining. They're in the match. They're in every game until the end. Obviously, a couple tough losses early in the season this year, but I tend to believe. Sorry, something fell off. I tend to believe Matt Wells when he said they're trying to win every trophy, and obviously Rapids going to Salt Lake here in a couple weeks to start their Rocky Mountain Cup title defense. All that, and I said 5 more games in, I think 15 or 18 days here before the World Cup break. So we'll see what the Rapids can give to St. Louis tomorrow night at DSG Park, 7:30 start time, Mountain Standard Time. Speaking of Mountain Standard Time, you can go to YouTube, Twitch, search Mountain Standard Time. Find this show. I am live right now. You can find it live then. I cut up the show afterwards, put it on podcast services, a more produced kind of thing. Thanks to host emeritus Caberto for being involved in that. You can find us on Blue Sky, TikTok. I'm on Facebook sometimes. I go to Reddit and I kind of, not creep, what is it called? I'm around. I watch and listen and sometimes get in an argument. Last time I did a rant because, Redditors know everything, right? So they put altitude doesn't affect anything at these levels, and I kind of went off on that. But then, I'm like, I don't know. If you don't believe that, every single player says it does. Every single coach says it does. Every single player says it does. So I don't know what to believe. What? Like every single person that says the altitude affects you, or one Redditor guy that maybe he was just starting trolling to troll, those are my favorite people. We have one in the White House right now. So thank you for listening to Rapids Rant. I am Don Pablo. I'll be back next week to talk about the Rapids, hopefully, victory against St. Louis Soccer Club. If you've listened this far,